Okay, hello. This is an introduction to the new Gruntz activation cards, which I've released for the Gruntz 15mm sci-fi game. I have a deck in my hand here. There are 63 cards in the pack, and they're essentially to allow you to add a little bit more of a dynamic feel to the turn sequence. And by that I mean the cards themselves are assigned to the units. Doesn't matter what kind of unit type it is, you just assign the cards randomly between both players to the individual units, which is the reason why they're these micro sized, because you can pop them directly onto the board. Once they're down, you flip them over and that determines a sequence number, which then allows you to activate between the two players. So you could have a really unlucky round where your opponent somehow manages to get most of the higher numbers in the set, so a higher number goes first in terms of the play sequence. There's also a different way that you can assign them. You could assign a stack to a player randomly, dish them out and allow that player to then choose the assignment themselves. So there's two different play types you can do with this, either a completely chaotic activation sequence where you play the cards down blind onto the actual units in the game, and then it's randomly determining who's going first, highest number first, or assign them to the player first before putting them down on the actual units, and allow that player to then determine, well, actually I'd like my tank to have the highest activation because I know it's going to devastate the opponent's squad first. That sort of gameplay. And that gives you some flexibility with the cards to use them in those two different ways. As I think I've already said, 63 cards in the pack, and I've put them into these sleeves. These sleeves do not come with the cards themselves, but it's worth putting these sleeve protectors on, because if you're using them in a war game, you're going to be dropping them down onto the table, playing around with them, shuffling them, which is going to end in some scuff corners, which is kind of unavoidable. Now the Wargames Vault team, where these are for sale, have done a good job with the card quality, so it's pretty robust and it's a nice sort of thickness on the card there. They call it sort of premium quality. However, I think it's just worth protecting your investment by buying these. Ultra Pro do these cards as well, and what you want to look for is this particular size, which is this mini American board game size. And again, the reason for that smaller size of the cards is because I didn't want to clutter up someone's gaming table with the larger sort of baseball card size, especially with 15mm gaming. Otherwise the whole table could look a bit covered in cards. You have got an alternative for this. You don't have to sort of place them directly next to a squad or a tank or a vehicle. You could place them on the unit card on the side of your table. So if you're a player that wants to have a game where it's a completely tidy Wargames table with no paperwork on it, you could keep your profile cards on the edge of the table and then assign these cards down onto those profiles. So just talking again a little bit more about what's on them. As I say, there's 63 cards in the pack. They all have the same back, which is sort of a Gruntz logo with some tasteful bullet holes in it, and then the actual cards themselves range up to about 610, I think, is the highest number. The reason I've made the numbers go up to sort of in tens, which you can see here, actually this is no good, you can see these numbers very clearly, is just to make it very, very quick and easy for a player to go, alright, this one's going first because it has the highest number. Very easy to determine that when you've got someone with, say, a 110 and you've got a 570. Makes it very quickly to visualise that from the board level. And there's more to the cards than just the numbers. Some of them have a special ability, particularly the lower numbers, because they activate later. So, for example, this one, which is not going to get in yet, this one, it has an image. They all have an image on them when they're a card that does something, again making it easy to check. And then you can see it's got downhill plus 2 inches to base move for this activation, all unit types. So again, some of the cards don't apply to all unit types. So you may randomly put down a card that's good for a Gruntz squad, but if you put it onto a mechanised unit, it's not going to work. Obviously that's if you've used the random determination, but if you've done the style of play where you dish out these cards first to each player, and then allow them to assign it based on the number of squads and units they've got. That will allow them to go, okay, well I've got one here that's good for a Gruntz squad, I'm going to put that on my Gruntz squad. Obviously, if you use that particular activation type, I'd actually prefer it completely random, just because it gives the game a more chaotic feel as the sort of battle flows. Give you some more examples then of things that we've got on here. There's quite a few of these graphics cards. Here we go with one that has an arrow on, and it's an instant, so when it's flipped face up, this unit, any type, can choose to instantly move up to 4 inches before it activates. So essentially that's an out of turn movement, again adding a bit of chaos to the battlefield, because if you've been lucky to land that on a unit, it means none of that movement is coming out of their normal movement that turn. They've just been able to get a bit of an edge on the battlefield, make a quick move and take advantage of that. So in fact, as soon as that's flipped over, the player gets to be able to take that action. Now there are a couple of cards like this one that are the same, and you would again do those movements based on the sequence number on there. So this one being a 200, if you happen to have the 400, which also has that instant movement, the 400 is going to do that instant move before the player with the lower number. So again, you always just check what the number is. It's the higher number goes first for those out of turn instant effects that happen there. Just digging through now. I haven't done much in terms of preparation for this video. Sorry, it's a bit rushed. Let me get another one out here. That's an interesting one. Okay. So here's another one of these particular cards that works for a certain unit only. Give me some focus there, please. No, it's not going to give me focus. And focused. So this one says very rather unclearly, because of the focus there, it's a specialist only. It can flip one die to a 6 this turn. So essentially, if that was on a specialist unit, one of its die rolls can be converted to a 6, and that could be its attack roll, that could be any roll that it's making, even to sort of bail out of a vehicle. You could then say, well, I'm going to use that flip over to give me 1 6 on that roll. Of course, normally in Gruntz you're rolling pairs of dice, and that means that one of those two in a pair is going to be a 6. So again, these cards don't come up very often, but when they do, they give that little bit of an edge to show that for whatever reason that unit has gained an advantage on the battlefield. Maybe it's had some information through from intelligence or what have you. And there's one other card I wanted to show, and that's this one. It's the switch card, and again, if these ones are randomly dished out again, and there's quite a few of them in the pack. Sorry, it's not focusing again. Move my hand in. Brief focus. However, what this card does is allow you to switch this activation point, which is 310, with another unit in your particular force, which also has the switch card. So essentially you're just changing their position. So if you've had this randomly dished out to your units, when it turns over you can switch it, and obviously by that you could actually change the priority of your forces, so that maybe this was a weak Gruntz squad, you'd switch it with one that was a more important unit for you on the battlefield. Again, just giving you a little bit of an edge to move another squad first. Oh, here's another one. This is one, which is kind of a one-off in the deck, obviously, and basically it's got shock on there, so the unit cannot shoot and can only make one move action, and any existing suppression can't be removed this turn. So this is almost like a Joker card, really. You don't want that shock to come in there, but it's the only one card in there that's got that, and of course it also goes last, so you're in a very bad situation for that unit if you've picked that up. So there's other little things, bits and pieces like that in there. What I will do now is just show you very briefly what I mean by flipping the cards up on the table, just as a quick overview. Okay, great. So here's a very brief overview. This layout is not representative of a real game, because I've only got a couple of squads and units down, really just to sort of show what would happen when the cards flip over. So in terms of how the sequence of the turn would play, you'd start the first turn with obviously a fresh deck of cards, which you can then dish out randomly to different units. I've got some sort of mutant guys here, and a squad up on the hill here behind the crater, a mechanised mecha unit here, and actually it's just outside but I'll bring it in, a gun, a sort of missile emplacement unit there, pop-up style. And what I've done is then just push down these cards, dish them out one at a time, shuffled the deck first because you don't want them all in the same sequence, and then both players would simultaneously turn them over. So that's the sort of option one. These are all detailed in the rules under the card optional rules for Gruntz. However, the other version would be to hand out the cards in a stack. So you'd say to someone, how many units have you got? And they'd say, well, I've got 10 different squads and tanks and vehicles. You'd give them randomly dished out that amount of cards, and then they would be able to say, well, actually I'm going to put the 140 on that squad because it's I'm not too worried about it. It's at the back of the battlefield, whereas I want the 320 to go on another one. They would still assign those face down, so the opponent player wouldn't know what sequence their unit's going to activate. And obviously, rather than I go, you go, you'd literally strictly follow what's on the card. So if it turned over, this one was a 140 here, and this unit had turned over and it flipped up as a 320, you'd obviously activate this one first because it had the highest number, and then jump over here to this player. Well, unless there were other cards out in between there. So the gameplay alternates by unit rather than by player. So you don't switch between both players unless the card dictates it with the number sequence. I found this works really, really well in larger games. If you want to get a bunch of people around a table and give them all a go at a game, rather than Gruntz just being a two-player game, you can get a bunch of people around a table, dish these cards out, and then everybody feels like they're taking a turn because they're not having to wait for a whole entire opponent's force to play before they do. So it's good fun for a sort of team play game. So that's my banter bit over. So essentially I've dished out the cards randomly to each player and then flip them over all at the same time. Now, one thing I did do is on the cards on both sides you've got the number sequence in up facing and down facing version, so that if you're looking at the table from another direction you can at least see what the card says. Now, just a note again, which I mentioned earlier, you could, if you were playing with profile cards, I haven't got my profile cards out for these particular units, but you could not put these cards out on the table. You could actually put them by your profile cards at the edge of the table, and that keeps the table a lot tidier. But as I said again earlier, I use this micro small mini card format, which means it doesn't take as much space up on the table anyway. So all of the cards would be flipped over simultaneously, and that would then determine the sequence. Now what I can see over here is this squad on the hill has one of these 100s which has an arrow on it, which means it has an instant 4-inch move. So that actually is an out of turn action, and it happens as soon as it's flipped over. If there was another player with one of those, again you would move them in the sequence that it came up. So essentially I could do a quick 4-inch move down the hill. I'm not measuring this because I'm just showing you generally how that would happen. And that action would happen before they actually activated. So you can see over here, the gun emplacement, the missile launcher is on a 560s. It's the highest number here, so it actually goes first. However, that out of turn quick move, which is they've got an advantage for whatever reason on the battlefield, happens before they actually normally activate this turn. So yes, so basically in terms of how this would play out, this defending missile point I'm not showing you the rules at the moment, but it would fire, obviously, probably on this unit up here, or maybe at the squad coming down the hill. And once it's had its turn, you would just discard this, put it into a discard pile, because it's now activated. Then I've got a 390 up here, which is a sniper guy up on the hill. He's got a card that says he can roll one die, and well, basically one of his die rolls this turn can be converted to a 6. So if I was going to snipe this specialist unit, I'd probably shoot at one of these guys down here, which would be a multi-wound specialist heavy guy down here,
and I may decide to turn one of the dice into a 6. So if I rolled 2d6 on the shooting, one of them came up with a 3, I might want to push it up to a 6 to ensure a hit. So that's just how that card will play out. So he's activated, he's taken a shot, he's used that bonus there. And next up is a 190 over here. This says recover. When flipped face up, this unit, Gruntz squad only, can immediately remove a suppression condition. So again, I won't go into the detail of the rules, but suppression is really key in the Gruntz game, and obviously if you get that and it happens to be on a Gruntz squad, it's no good on a mechanised unit like this. It would obviously allow them to remove that suppression. They've got a recovery. So basically that was on 190, I'd activate it, move the unit, maybe take a shot. Then I've got 100 over here. They've already done that instant bonus move that they got, and perhaps they now stay where they are because they're now in range. They'll take a shot down the hill at these chaps. And these lucky guys, they have they've got the lowest number on the that I've dished out, but they've got blind spot. And basically what this means is that the unit finds some lucky cover and is obscured by smoke and has a +2 to guard versus ranged attack this turn. So it's just a lucky moment. Even though they're out in the open, they may have found a boulder or something that you haven't necessarily represented on the table as terrain, but it gives them that little bit of a bonus edge. So that goes into discard pile. What I would do then, if again in the Gruntz rules it's detailed, but get rid of that discard pile, and then the next turn obviously dish out a new random set to the various units. Again, like I said, it could be put on the table. You don't want them face up. Yeah, it could go on the table, or it could go beside the profile card. And once you've worked through that deck, probably after about 2 or 3 turns, you can then shuffle them all back in again to shuffle the discard pile back into the main deck. So that's it, a very brief, hurried overview. I'm sure I'll be putting more detail up with a game. I have actually put a full video on YouTube, if you check the YouTube channel out, showing card activation using a normal deck of cards, which was what was in the first primary rule set for Gruntz. This just extends that a bit by adding a few extra bonuses and differences to make that activation sequence a bit more random. So hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for listening in. Oh, just a point on the terrain actually, so people are aware. These plastic craters on this grey waste style terrain, they're the Games Workshop ones, and they've just been sort of hammered into some foam core there, and then some terrain built up over the side. So this is the Games Workshop crater, and it's been cut. And also over the back here, you've got the full-size Games Workshop craters. And they make very effective terrain, really, especially if you give them that sort of edge where you smooth them into the layout. Thanks for listening, and bye.